And we're back. Since last lesson was all about multiplying exponents, you can guess that this lesson is going to be all about dividing exponents. And this is going to be a bit of a longer video because we want to go into exactly why all of these concepts work so that you can totally understand exactly what it is you're doing. But just because this is a longer video doesn't mean this is complicated. In fact, you should hopefully find it pretty easy. We just want to give you some background information. So remember that when we were multiplying with exponents last lesson, let's say we had this problem right here. We have x to the power of 5 times x to the power of 2, or x squared is another way to say that one. And what does that equal? Well, remember when we're multiplying with exponents that all we have to do is add up the exponent numbers. So in this case, 5 and 2. Add those together and that gives us our new exponent number. So in this case it would be x to the power of 7 because 5 plus 2 is 7. We went through last time why that is. If we write out all the x's involved in each of these, all the factors of x, you would get 7 x's. So x to the power of 7. Well, when you're dividing with exponents, because division is basically the opposite of multiplication, you're going to do the opposite thing. So in this case, let's rewrite this problem for division, and let's say that we have the problem x to the power of 7 divided by x to the power of 5. What does that equal? Well, remember, division and multiplication are opposites, so in multiplication we added those exponent numbers together. In division we're going to subtract. So in this case it would be x to the power of 7, that's our one number, and x to the power of 5, that's our other one. I'm supposed to be like highlighting these. This is like a highlight. So 7 minus 5 is 2. So in this case the answer would be x to the power of 2. And of course that matches what we had up here because x to the power of 5 times x to the power of 2 equaled x to the power of 7. So we would expect that x to the power of 7 divided by x to the power of 5 would equal x to the power of 2. We have all of the same terms involved. It's just whether we were multiplying or dividing. So like I said, pretty simple and basic to divide your exponents. Let's write just a few more out so you can get really confident with this. Let's say we have the problem y to the power of 4 divided by y to the power of 2. Now what is that one going to equal? Well, remember it's just basically a subtraction problem. We do 4 minus 2, which is 2 again, so this answer would be y to the power of 2. Let's do another one. Let's do m to the power of 3 divided by m. Well, remember that when we have just one m, we can sometimes just put in this little 1. We often leave the 1 off, like I've said, because it's redundant. If you have one m, you don't really need to be told that there's one m. But sometimes it's helpful, because then we can look at this and say 3 minus 1 is 2. The answer to this is always 2, apparently. This book is not very imaginative. The m squared is the answer to that one. Alright, so when we're actually dealing with problems in algebra, we'll usually see a problem that looks a little bit more like this. We're going to have some actual numbers along with some variables, in this case a to the 5th, and we're going to divide that by 6a cubed, or to the 3rd. Alright, so what's the answer to this one going to be? Well, we're going to kind of do this in two parts. So the first part we're going to do is we're going to handle the numbers. Alright, so what's 24 divided by 6? How many times does 6 go into 24? Well, the answer to that is, of course, 4 times. So 4. And then we're going to handle the variables. So we have a to the 5th and a cubed. So 5 minus 3 is going to be 2 again. Yet again, the answer is 2, and so the answer would be 4a squared in very colorful handwriting. Alright, so that's basically what you're doing. You could just stop the video here if you decide that you don't want this extra background information. That's totally your choice, but I am going to give you a bit of information about why exactly this happens. Sometimes it's useful for when the factors get a little more complicated. Let's say we had a 5a squared x to the 4th z problem and we were dividing it by a x cubed and z. Let's say that we had a 2 in front here. Like, that gets a little more tricky than just one variable, and so sometimes it's helpful to have this background information to fall back on. So let's look at what we're doing when we're dividing. Starting back with our 24 divided by 6 problem, because all division is essentially the same. Remember when I said we were doing 24 divided by 6, another way to think about that is how many times does 6 go into 24? Well, in this case, we know from our multiplication practice that 6 goes into 24 4 times. So we could do 6 times 4 to write that out. And we could also do like 6 times 1 to keep things consistent. So this would be the same as that. We could also write down all our 6's if we wanted to. We could do 6. Sorry, that doesn't work. My brain went somewhere else. Anyway, 6 times 4. So when we're looking at taking out and doing our division of this, if we have written out the factors, 6 times 1 and 6 times 4, we can divide out the common factor. 6 divided by 6 is just 1, right? So then we could rewrite this as 4 divided by 1 times 1 over 1. Of course, 1 over 1 is just 1 and it doesn't change anything, so the answer is 4. That's what we're doing when we're doing this division problem. And we know all this facts off the top of our head, so we don't really have to think it through these steps, but we could. So when we're doing a division of variables with exponents, we're doing a very similar thing. So let me write out our exponent problem. In the problem that we did before with the a's, we had a to the power of 5 and that's supposed to be an a to the power of 3. And in this case, we had a times a times a times a times a. A to the power of 5th is 5 a's, or 5 factors of a. And then on the bottom, we had a times a times a, right? Because a to the 3rd is 3 factors of a. Well, when we're doing this, we can look at it and say, well, a divided by a is 1. So we don't need that there anymore. And a divided by a is 1. And we can do another one. A divided by a is 1. So what are we left with? Well, just 2 factors of a. So we're left with a times a, which is also written as a squared. So in that original problem that we did, let me rewrite it here just for jogging our memory. A to the 5th divided by 6a cubed. Well, we did 24 divided by 6 is 4, and as we just showed, we can cancel out those 3 a's because they all divide into 1, and so our answer is 4a squared. That's our final answer. So that's what we're doing. We're basically just factoring out and then dividing everything that creates a 1, a divided by a equals 1, as many times as we can to simplify that number down as far as possible. So that when we do get a more complicated problem, let's say we have, let's go back to this, let's do 12 a squared x to the 6th y cubed z divided by, let's do 4 a x cubed z, right? All right, let's look at that. So if you're going to think about this in the division way we just did, well, let's first do the division of 4 and 12. So 12 divided by 4, 4 goes into 12 3 times. So that's easy. Then we're looking at this one. Well, a squared and a. So 2 minus 1 is just 1a left over after we divide that, because if we were to write this out in its little bits and its factors, I should do this in a different color. Write this out in its factors. We have a times a, and this a would cancel out with that a, leaving us 1a, which we have right there. Perfect. All right, so then let's go to yellow marker. Then we have x to the 6th. And remember, we could write out x an x, an x, an x, an x, and x. 6 x's. And down here we have 3 x's. And so when we're looking at that, we can be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, cancel those all out. So our answer is x cubed, or remember we could just do 6 minus 3. That gives us 3, so that's our answer. Well, with the y, we don't have anything that's being divided by, so we're just going to leave y alone. So y is going to continue being y cubed. And then with the z, there's only one z on both top and bottom, so z divided by z is 1. That makes that one really easy. That one cancels out, and that one cancels out, and our final answer is this. Alright, hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully that little explanation of factors helps lock into your brain exactly what's happening when we're dividing these numbers. Algebra problems are going to get into this more complex situation, but as long as you handle it term by term, factor by factor, you shouldn't have any problem handling these larger algebraic expressions that we're going to be seeing. I'm going to give you 2 more problems to try on your own and then work on your homework. So I'll give you these problems. I want you to work them out, and then I will write the answers. Pause the video until you have the answer solved. Okay, so let's do this problem. They're getting a little tricky this time. They want to add in, remember how to divide your fractions as well as your exponents. So this is just going to be a little bit of review. Everything that you do in algebra is just going to keep building on itself. So if you ever get a little fuzzy with any of the concepts, feel free to go back and rewatch a video or 2 just so that you remember how things work. You want to be really solid in these foundational things. Otherwise, it's going to get a little overwhelming when these expressions start getting a little bigger. But like I said, as long as you're solid on your factors and everything, you shouldn't have a problem. Alright, solve this one problem. Pause the video right now, and then come back for us solving it together. Okay, hopefully you have solved the problem, and let's go through it together just in case. So we're going to start with our numbers, just because we like those easily. Let's work on our numbers down here. I'm going to just do a little different section of the whiteboard to work these fractions through. So 3/8 divided by 1/2. Now when we're dividing fractions, remember that dividing fractions is actually just multiplying the reciprocal of the fraction, but I'll work it through just in case you need that little reminder. So when we're doing this, we want we want to get rid of this underneath denominator part, right? Because it's just messy to deal with. So if we multiply both sides, top and bottom of the equation, by 2/1, the reciprocal of this fraction, then, oh, that's supposed to be 1. And that means that we can get this part of the fraction gone, because 1/2 times 2/1 equals 2/2, which equals just 1, and anything divided by 1 is just itself, right? So that means we can just work with this top part of the fraction and things can be much easier. And because we have done the reciprocal of this fraction and we're doing the same thing on top and bottom, we're multiplying it by the same number top and bottom, we're not actually changing the value of anything, but we are writing it in a way that makes it much easier to solve. If you need a review on that, I did do a video on it. Anyway, here we are. So if we're multiplying this by the reciprocal of this bottom fraction, then we can do 3 times 2, which is 6, and 8 times 1, which is 8. If we wanted to, we could rewrite that divided by this 1 that we had from our other reciprocal, and 6 divided by 8 divided by 1 is still just going to be 6/8. So our answer is 6/8, but 6/8 can be simplified even further because there are factors in both of these that match. So we could write this one as 3 times 2 on the top, 3 times 2 is 6, and then on the bottom we could do 4 times 2. 2 divided by 2 cancels itself out, and that means we're left with 3/4. Alright, so we've done the fraction part, this part of the problem. We have 3/4 now, so in our final answer we know that we're going to have the number 3/4 at the front. Perfect. So let's go through and solve the variables now. And we'll work these up here on the top version. All right, so looking at this, we have x to the 3 and x to the 3. Well, x to the third divided by x to the third is going to cancel itself out, but if we want to do it in our heads just a little bit more, we could do 3 minus 3, which equals 0, which means we have no x's left. They canceled themselves out, divided into 1, they're gone. Lovely. All right, moving on to y's. Y to the fourth and y squared. So we're going to do 4 minus 2, which is y squared. And 2 of those y's canceled out and became 1's. And then z. Well, we don't have any z's on the bottom, so we're just going to be left with z. So our final answer for this question, and hopefully the answer that you got, is y squared z over here, which means that our final answer is 3/4 y squared z. All right. That should be the answer. Hopefully you are feeling prepared to tackle your worksheet. And if there are any questions or problems, let me know.